clearly what hooked me was her body of work around workplace suicide prevention and workplace mental health. And so she published some very large papers in partnership with others, but way before we had this kind of research going on in the United States, suicide by occupation, several systematic and reviews and meta-analyses that pull together all kinds of studies and try to make sense of what's the pattern here, what are the conclusions. Psychosocial hazards. I learned that term from her, and now I use it daily.
My small research group was really focusing on work and mental health. And one of the things that was really appealing when Allison approached me is, oh, well, we could extend that to suicide outcome. And when Allison arrived, this was clearly an area that was ripe for investigation and needed some clever methodology. And so what we devised with Allison was to say, when someone dies by suicide, you can't go back and ask them about their working conditions, obviously. So the things that are done in this kind of research, as you all know, is you can interview next of kin or things like this. But to do things on a population level, which we did access the National Coroner's Information Database in Australia, so we can get a fairly comprehensive view of the problem itself. And then to estimate exposure, though, or what we did is we used a traditional occupational epidemiology strategy, which is to say, well, what we can do is if we knew the person's occupation when they died, and we can get a sense of what the exposures to job control, job demands, social support at work, job insecurity, and other things, if we can get a picture of that exposure by occupation across the working population, then we can substitute that in and see if that works. And that's in fact what we do. That's called a job exposure matrix. With this approach, we did one of the first case control studies of job stressors and suicide and showed associations with job strain and job control and other things. The whole equity angle, Allison and I were very much on the same page in this regard in the first place. The point of our work is to try to improve the working lives of people.
So forever and today, the narrative has been suicide is about mental health. And if you get your depression treated or your anxiety treated, suicide will fall away. That's still a predominant narrative here in the United States. And what her work showed is, probably counts for some, but there's a whole bunch of other things happening. If we don't address these, we're still going to have suicide. That was such an important shift in the narrative. To start holding people accountable for these social justice issues if they're concerned about suicide.
What we want to do is we want to identify the modifiable determinants of suicide risk and act on them. In her short number of years working on this particular problem, she contributed more to advancing that question, whether job stressors increase suicide risk, more than anyone else internationally. And that brought her great notoriety around the world.